Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2018 comedy movie titled Night School. Now, Night School runs for 1 hour and 51 minutes long. It is directed by Malcolm D. Lee. It is produced by Kevin Hart and Will Packer. The script was written by Kevin Hart, Harry Ratchford, Joey Wells, Matt Kellard, Nicholas Stoller, and John Hamburg. It was composed by David Newman, the cinematography by Greg Gardner, and it was edited by Paul Miltspag. And the stars of the movie are Kevin Hart, Tiffany Haddish, Taran Killem, Rob Riggle, Romany Malco, Lynn Rajskub, Al Madrigal, Ann Winters, Fat Joe, Ben Schwartz, Megalyn, Echikunwoke, Keith David, Bresha, Webb, Donna, Biscoe, and Yvonne Orji. It seems that actor-comedian Kevin Hart seems to enjoy keeping himself busy by making multiple movies in a year. I guess, if he finds the opportunity and he wants to expand his horizons, I see nothing wrong with that. But in the movie Night School, Hart plays the role of Teddy Walker, a successful businessman selling barbecues and barbecue products, almost similar to like what Hank Hill does in King of the Hill. He sells propane and propane accessories. So, Teddy Walker is a very confident individual who knows how to pitch ideas and knows how to con his way out of problems, knowing that he's not as well off as people make him out to be. But he definitely is a very successful businessman due to the sense that he knows how to advertise, he knows how to pitch, he knows how to get people to buy these products. And definitely he is very dedicated to his job. He seems to be very, very good with his work, even though it's pretty much a small business. So even though he passes himself off as being all that successful, but really he's working in a small business type hardware store selling barbecues, and I don't really know if you can actually come off being really all that wealthy. Maybe you'll probably have enough money to pay the rent for your apartment and all the other essential bills. But, to be honest with you, he likes to pass himself off as a big wig when really it turns out that he's not. I mean, he took his date out for an expensive dinner, and instead, he was so confident that he promised that he was going to pay the bill, but when he realized that the bill was way over his budget, he decided to con his way into getting a free meal at the cost of one of his employees getting fired. See, that's just how much of a talker and a con man he is. Oh, you would probably think that, well, hey, he's probably a successful businessman. Does that mean he's educated? Well, you're wrong. He's actually a high school dropout. He dropped out of high school because he just couldn't seem to focus. Or maybe he was either overwhelmed with tests and exams that it wasn't for him, or that every time he saw an exam, he would either choke and end up having cold feet. Either way, the guy is a high school dropout. Sure, it seems like he does well in his business selling barbecues and barbecue products, accessories, but the guy just comes across as being an optimistic, confident individual who thinks he's a bigwig success. He thinks he could just con his way into everything, but it turns out he's not all who he thinks, who we all want to believe, and he's not all who he says he is. So he goes out of his way to impress his lover, Lisa, played by Megalyn Echikunwoke, by pretending he's got a wall made when he really doesn't. Okay, so then we come to a point where because he was so successful in selling these barbecues, he was about to get promoted to a managerial position at his work. But then suddenly, due to his own carelessness, the store blows up and now he's out of a job. Makes you wonder how come the only thing we get from him is him flying out of a burning building and not one flame gets ignited on him. It makes you often wonder. He should have been burned to a crisp. I mean, I'm not wishing it on him, but if this was reality, he should have gone out with the flames. Instead, the store blows up and he comes out without a scratch. I mean, how ridiculous and surreal that is. But anyways, he's now out of a job, and fortunately, though, he does have friends in high places. He gets offered another job working as a stockbroker because he knows his ins and outs in businesses and knows how to get people to sell products, with his years of experience in that barbecue business. So so his friend, who kind of feels bad for him, offers him another job. But in order to get the job, he must obtain his GED, which he never bothered to take due to his learning issues. Now, in some ways, you kind of feel bad for him, the fact that he's got learning issues, even though he often comes across as being kind of laid back about it. Still, you gotta admit the guy does have some kind of a learning disability, or as he calls himself, learning herpes, which is just a fancy word for saying no, nothing personal, but I think you are dyslexic. Either that or you have ADHD, I don't know, somewhere around that complexity issues. Anyways, he does have learning issues, and I guess trying to obtain his GED is the only solution. So Teddy returns to his old alma mater and he runs into a peer that he tormented who goes by the name of Stuart, played by Taran Killem, who also returned to his school and now he is serving as the school principal. So he goes from being a social outcast and now all of a sudden he is the new school principal. Well, not new school principal, I don't know if it's new, but he is currently running the school. He is also under the hands of a strict, no-nonsense teacher named Carrie, played by Tiffany Haddish. He's also classmates with a cornucopia of misfits who also need to apply themselves if they ever wish to succeed, while Teddy tries to hold off Stuart, who may be plotting revenge on Teddy for bullying him in high school by making his whole GED journey into a living hell. And even though Taran Killem's character Stuart kind of plays off as an antagonist, uh, there are parts of us that really feel bad for him for the way he was mistreated in school. So it's perfectly understandable that his anger and his angst at getting back at Teddy is perfectly understandable, even though there are times when his character runs on a level of cringe, especially when he starts talking in Ebonics, when really, actually, the guy is far from anything that spells Ebonics. I mean, when he tries to go ghetto on both Teddy and Carrie, it comes across as being at times a bit forced and at times a bit cringe, even though we all know the guy is clearly playing off the antagonist. Although Carrie's character as the teacher, she is a no-nonsense teacher, but then she at first thinks that Teddy is a goof who doesn't want to apply and doesn't want to do this. There are many times when she just like simply just tells him to get the hell out of her classroom. But then we come to also realize that she is a fair teacher who will be willing to give him as many chances as he possibly can to obtain his GED. He has to get a certain number of marks to pass. But she's willing to, like help him along the way. So even though she might be firm, she also comes across as being fair. Now, in some ways, this could also rest on the realms of stereotypes. Like, why is it that in a lot of movies teachers come across as being extremely firm? Yeah, I mean, I know there are teachers who naturally, organically are supposed to be firm. I mean, I've met my fair share of very firm teachers who seem to be extremely strict. But then again, I also start to realize that these teachers are not out to be firm because they want to, it's simply because they have to. And I actually do find it admirable that she actually does come across as being sympathetic to Teddy being a goofball. There was even parts where he was also starting to take some part-time work, especially selling what is supposed to be described as Christian chicken. Like, what is it? Is it like you get a bucket of chicken complete with a quote from the Bible? I don't know. What the hell is Christian chicken? Is it grilled? Is it fried? Is it sauteed? What is it? Anyhow, Teddy's quest to obtain his GED is not going to come across easy because number one, he needs to apply hard, even if it's the last thing he does. And also, aside from that, he's got a vengeful classmate of his who's now a principal, and he's going to try his best to make his life a living hell. And then also you got Carrie, who has no patience for goof-offs like him. So, he's got a lot of heavy burden on his hands. But the question we want to know is, will he obtain it? We'll soon see. Eventually, actually, he does. But it does take a lot out of him to reach that level. So, following in the trails of other movies about older people returning to school, like Rodney Dangerfield's Back to School, or Adam Sandler's Billy Madison, or Todd Phillips's Old School, I always thought that the concept about an older person returning back to school was fun. I mean, it's like they're trying to adapt to the newer educational protocols while still finding ways to cling on to their old ways of thinking. However, night school is actually quite inferior to back to school, Billy Madison, and old school. In fact, it's really, really watered down to in terms of comedy. And it's mostly due to it being one note, and it's not as raw or daring either. The cast definitely does put their effort in their respective roles, especially the supporting actors like Rob Riggle, Romany Malco, and Lynn Rajskub. I mean, you have Madrigal and Ann Winters as Teddy's classmates. each with their own reasons why they want to obtain their GED, while still adding the comedic touches very pleasantly. I mean, they're just as capable of providing their own comedy, the supporting cast, even though their roles are not as fleshed out because of little screen time, but they do make up their own. They do make up with what little material is given to them. Hart does everything he could to make his character sympathetic. I mean, we do feel bad for him that he's struggling to maintain get his GED. I guess you could say it's just anxieties that caused him to drop out of high school, or that maybe sometimes a lack of focus has been also another key point. But now we are seeing him at least trying to make the efforts to pass and to get his GED, even though it's not going to be easy. And though Carrie was a firm teacher who demanded respect, she also has a large quantity of civilian injected in her. Haddish succeeds in playing one of her more level-headed roles and definitely has some great chemistry with Kevin Hart. I'll also have to say that Taran Killem is wonderful as the leading antagonist, Principal Stewart, and even puts in some great comic relief, like in the scene where he goes ghetto-voiced to make himself sound intimidating, although it just comes across making him look more awkward. And though the acting was overall pretty good, the results still somehow remain unsatisfactory. Its intentions were to have this movie as an R-rated movie with some of the dialogue featured, but then they decided to sort of hunker down to make it more inferior than it should have been. So I guess they wanted to have a much more darker, edgier type comedy, but instead they decided to go with more screwball level PG-13 type movie. So it could be like in competition to Back to School, Billy Madison, and Old School. So eventually they just simply watered it down to make it less climactic and also not very high in the satisfactory levels because everything is so saccharine. Under the direction of Malcolm D. Lee, who previously once directed Tiffany Haddish in a previous outing called Girls Trip, Night School was unable to fulfill the gaps needed to make this a standalone comedy, with the exception of a few laughs that were few and far between. The script fell also victim to the adage of too many cooks spoil the broth, in which 6 people, including Kevin Hart, were given credit for writing the movie. Once again, like I said before in my previous review, why the hell do they always insist to have more than one writer writing a fucking script? Why can't they just depend on one screenwriter? Why? Once again, I also ask myself, is it because they don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, so they decide to just cram everything all in? Just depend on one writer, and you can tell the others, like I said before, go play in traffic. Just give one writer, and you can tell the others to just simply fuck off. I only need one writer. No one else. Thank you, and get lost. That's kind of like what is one of the big things. And why does it happen mostly in comedies? so that everybody can be satisfied, so that they don't get their feelings hurt. Oh, boo-hoo. That's where I get this whole too many cooks spoil the broth. It's like they all added submissions, and so not to leave anyone out. They, like I said, they decided to cram all their ideas together to come up with something that is both convoluted and formulaic. With the myriad of Kevin movies out there, this one is on the lower end of the radar scale. However, it will amuse you as a distraction if you're in a gloomy mood. Okay, we'll give credit to that. And though I never complain too much about running time in movies, like a lot of whiner fans who write in on IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes like, oh, this is too long. I don't believe in that. But I do kind of feel that this movie runs for almost 2 hours long. It would have been better if the running time was about maybe 90 minutes. And maybe better editing would have been much more sufficient. Just my opinion. Anybody who has got a different opinion, they're entitled to it. I don't criticize or ostracize other people's opinions, because they all mean something. And though it's not the worst movie I've ever seen, Night School was definitely far from perfect. The acting stood out as manageable. The characters were well rounded and fleshed out quite nicely. And there was some good chemistry, like I said, between Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish. It is still quite inferior to other school-themed comedies due to it being raw and nothing that will, spark your attention. It's pretty much forgettable material. So if you are to see it, you can watch it on account of a guilty pleasure, but don't let your expectations run into overdrive, because you're not going to find it here. So, and all that said and done, if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would give Night School, and I might be being too generous, but like I said before, I'm a good guy. I'm a nice guy. My last name may not be Hart, but I sure put myself into a category of a person who plays through Hart. I would give Night School a 6 out of 10. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. So until next time, this is Eric Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.